Well, good morning. And Councilmember Lambert, thank you for having us. I appreciate it. In case you're not aware, my name is Dow Constantine. I'm the King County Executive. If you're expecting something else, I apologize, but we'll try to keep it entertaining. Elected leaders, thank you for joining us. Prosecutor Satterberg, our mayors, and others. To our valued employees, to the people of King County, and Pam Stearns, thank you so much for that moving and meaningful introduction and reminder of the debt that we will never be able to repay to the indigenous peoples of this land. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me at the Preston Community Center, this beautiful county facility here in the Cascade Foothills. I want first to take a moment to thank Callie Knight of our staff, who did a spectacular job of making the arrangements, of leading the arrangements. Thank you, Callie. And a very special treat for all of us today. I am pleased to welcome my predecessor, a man who served this county as executive for 3 terms, as one ought to, a dedicated and beloved public servant, Executive Ron Sims. I'd like to move on by acknowledging my cabinet, the directors of our 9 departments, and there are a number of new faces. In fact, last year I brought in 6 new department directors who share my vision for a regional government that works for people. Tanya Hanna, our Director of Information Technology and our Chief Information Officer. Anitha Kandawal, who is our Director of Public Defense. Leo Floor is the new head of the Department of Community and Human Services. Jay Osborne is our Director of the Human Resources Department. I named Rob Gannon the Director when I elevated Metro from being a division to being a department. And John Taylor, who is the inaugural Director of the Department of Local Services, Councilmember Lambert. I created this Department of Local Services last year to bring a new level of attention to the unincorporated areas of King County, 250,000 residents who, taken together, would constitute the 2nd largest city in the state of Washington. Along with the Roads Division, the Department of Local Services includes permitting and community services. The ink was barely dry on John's letterhead when he and the department had to jump into action earlier this year, responding to the worst winter storm in decades. Plowing roads, clearing bridges, getting help to where it needed to be. John and his team served the people of rural and urban unincorporated King County. Our roads crews ended up plowing the equivalent of 20,000 miles, and at our busiest, we had over 160 people out in the field working. One of those who answered the call was Jeremy Ferguson, in charge of the Roads Division Maintenance Section, who, along with his crews, worked 12-hour shifts for 16 straight days to clear King County roads. John, Jeremy, as well as leaders and union members representing the roads staff, for all that you did in those few weeks in February, and for your commitment to the people of Preston and North Bend and Carnation and all of unincorporated King County. Please stand and allow us to express our thanks to you. Ron, it was 10 years ago this fall that I took the oath of office to be our county executive. During this time, I've worked with 2 different governors and 6 different Seattle mayors. I am not making that up. And literally thousands of council members and other elected officials from across the region. In this, my 3rd term, I can see all that we've done and the work that remains unfinished to accomplish my goal of making this a welcoming community where every person can thrive. That is our true north. Making King County a welcoming community where every person can thrive. These words, each of them has meaning. Making, this is a process. We're not there yet, but through continuous improvement, we'll constantly strive to get there. Welcoming means opening our arms to newcomers, yes, which is so important in this moment in our nation's history, but also to long-timers who are feeling insecure, challenged by the pace of change all around us. Community. As we all know, our community is in fact many communities, and we want the entirety of King County to be a place where opportunity is abundant. Every person. We believe that every single person has value, that nobody is a write-off. We don't guarantee success. We work every day to create the conditions for people to make the most of their lives. So making King County a welcoming community where every person can thrive. These threads run through all the work we do. And we know how we're going to get there, by combining smart, progressive policies and the nuts and bolts of effective government. We orient ourselves toward that true north. These two components, ideas and practice, values and governance, help make King County what it is today. By looking back at the challenges we faced in 2009, we can see the progress we've made and how far we've yet to go. Of course, we couldn't have done any of this without strong collaboration from our represented workforce. Back in 2009, the nation's economy was reeling, and public employees felt the sting of layoffs and wage freezes and days when they were told to stay home without pay. That wasn't enough for some people who wanted to scapegoat public employees, to attack their unions, who wanted to strip government to the bone just as the need for services skyrocketed. Remember Scott Walker of Wisconsin? Well, his policies, they failed, and he lost re-election. At King County, we took a different approach. From my first days as executive, I sought to establish a strong partnership with labor, where we could achieve our goals of increased efficiency and increased productivity by incorporating our employees' ideas, their shared values, by empowering the people who've come to serve the public. And by working together in common purpose, we were one of the first employers in the nation to enact paid parental leave for all our employees. We created a professional development fund. We encouraged opportunities to volunteer at local charities and nonprofits. Working together, we took on a common enemy, rising healthcare costs. And not only did we win that fight, and it is a fight that Executive Sims started with healthy incentives, but we continued to improve health outcomes for our employees to the point that Harvard's Kennedy School recognized us with the Innovations in American Government Award. Most important, we stand united in our mission to deliver unparalleled customer service to the people of King County. The Department of Local Services is one more example of that commitment. No one exemplifies that commitment more than Eric Stark, a 7-year metro operator, a member of Amalgamated Transit Union 587, who garnered international headlines last month for what he did on the job. By now you all know the story. While at the wheel of his bus, Eric was shot in a random attack. And despite having been shot, he steered his bus several blocks out of danger, delivering his passengers to safety. You know, the word heroic, it's often bandied about. But in this case, there are a few other apt descriptions that capture what he did that day. For their service to King County, I would like you to join me in acknowledging Eric and his wife, Kim, who is also part of our King County family. Please join me in thanking them. I believe that government is at its best when it collaborates, when it brings people together, when it builds bridges and partnerships to deliver outcomes that cannot be achieved going it alone. Last May, we reached a new milestone in our journey of collective bargaining. We negotiated our first ever master labor agreement. It governs work conditions for 62 bargaining units, representing more than 5,000 King County employees. And just this month, I signed the total compensation agreement for those same employees, which sets the wages and benefits for the next 2 years. Instead of bargaining at dozens of tables on dozens of timelines, we sat at one collaborative table, which is more efficient and more effective. The agreements we reached benefit both labor and management, and they speak volumes about our relationship. And the employees across King County, they see the value in that. When the United States Supreme Court delivered the appalling Janus decision, the vast majority of our union employees opted to keep doing their fair share. And that speaks to the character of our employees, to the value of labor unions, the value that unions bring to the members as a collective voice on wages, on benefits, on working conditions. I believe in collective bargaining, worker protections, the right to organize. And I believe these things make King County stronger and more productive and more able to meet the needs of the 2.25 million people who today call this place home. As I consider the journey of these last 10 years, I want to call out one person in particular, my budget director, Dwight Dively, a regional, really a national treasure, who has guided our budgets to be sustainable and to be strong. Dwight shares my determination to do finances right, and he understands the short-term costs of doing that without smoke and mirrors. This is, after all, a man who, and I'm not making this up, has "I've done the math" on his coffee mug every day. We stole this from his office. Since I took office, we've successfully moved King County to a biennial budget, one of the few regional governments to do so, and that is far better for predictability and long-term planning. And every year, I've determinedly kept spending below the rate of inflation and population growth. Our AAA bond ratings testify to the fact that King County is a role model for regional governments from coast to coast. We've created comprehensive financial policies for each of King County's 140 different funds to best manage risk. And we have saved, get this, over $540 million in interest costs through aggressive debt refinancing and other financial practices. And we're not done yet. But I say to the region and the nation, this is what becoming best-run government looks like. You know, we've come a long way from the days of furloughs and foreclosures. Today, our region is experiencing unprecedented prosperity. As a government, we're providing more transit to more people than ever before. We're providing more housing to more people than ever before. For those experiencing behavioral health challenges, we're providing more services than ever before, where and when people need them. And we're protecting what makes this place so special and standing up for our values at a time when they are under constant attack by our federal government. Our accomplishments give us the perspective and the confidence, and I think the obligation as well to do even more. You know, we've reached the moment in our journey when we can make important and lasting progress in achieving our goals. We have clarity, we have conviction, we move with purpose and optimism. We can make history. Let's begin with how we're reforming healthcare delivery. You know, our story opens with the passage of the Affordable Care Act in 2010. When the health exchanges finally went online and the political dust settled, we knew that this incredible opportunity to improve the health and well-being of our region would be successful only if we enrolled people from all walks of life, people in every zip code in King County. We knew that simply opening a county storefront somewhere and waiting for people to drift in would not be sufficient. We needed to engage people on their terms, as we never had before. So we got to work. We forged partnerships with activists and community groups to spread the word about the importance and the availability of health insurance. And thanks to the work of so many, including the wonderful Daphne Pye from Public Health, who is here with us today, we made King County a national success story. In 5 years, we cut the uninsured rate in half. And the uninsured rate for children in King County has reached an historic low of 1.6%. And just as we've been a champion for the ACA, we're a national leader in family planning services and education. Today, because of our hard work, King County is one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates in the country, 2.5 times lower than the national average. Our success with the ACA and family planning and other community trends dropped demand for maternity support services and women, infants, and children, or WIC nutrition clinics, by some 35% in recent years. And so now we have an opportunity to re-examine our clients' needs and to refocus our resources to provide the greatest access to quality health care to the most people. So today, I propose a new model for delivering maternity support and nutrition services. We will create 4 mobile teams that will visit food banks and human service agencies and community centers throughout the region. And for our highest need clients, women experiencing barriers in their lives like homelessness or mental health challenges or substance use, or even like language or cultural differences, we will create a community support program, and for those women and families, a specialist will visit with them one-on-one in their homes or in another community location. While we offer these new services, we are also keeping our maternity support and WIC nutrition clinics open to continue serving the women and families for whom that system works best. I want to thank our public health partners who support our changes, and they're here today with us. HealthPoint, NeighborCare, Mary's Place. I also want to thank Director Patty Hayes and public health staff for their careful and innovative thinking. Yes, change is difficult. Uncertainties provoke anxiety. But I want to make this absolutely clear. Nurses and other health professionals take our values of inclusion and compassion and they put them into practice every moment of every day. Without their hard work, our public health mission would simply be good intentions without action. We stand together, all of us, to provide care to women and children on their terms, in ways that make the most difference, so that our partners, our communities rather, are healthier, they're stronger, and so that all children born in King County can have the opportunity to grow up healthy and to fulfill their potential. Earlier this year, I announced our 9th expansion of Metro Transit service in 4 years to meet the rising demand for transportation across the region. Now, if you get in a time machine, you go back a decade, you remember I mentioned that recession, you'll find that we faced a much different scenario. The Great Recession tanked sales tax revenues, on which Metro relies. And Metro had to weather significant service cuts, and those cuts have still not been restored in many parts of King County. What helped Metro regain its footing was a combination of factors. First, Seattle voters filled the gap to keep buses on the road after a King County-wide ballot measure failed. Then the regional economy, of course, rebounded. And our bottom line improved as we doggedly pursued financial reforms and new service guidelines that put buses where the service was needed the most. The next frontier for the Metro Transit Department is completely rethinking mobility, how you bridge the last mile between your home and a transit stop. This has been a goal of transit planners for decades. To make it happen, you need to be innovative. You need to offer people new ways to get around that respond to their needs and how they live and how they commute. This is the genesis of Metro's Ride To and Via To Transit programs. They offer on-demand shuttle services to and from transit hubs. We've launched pilot programs in Eastgate, in West Seattle, and as of last Tuesday, in Southeast Seattle and Tukwila, picking up people near their homes and taking them to the Mount Baker, Columbia City, Othello, Tukwila, and Rainier Beach light rail stations. Now, in fact, when we were announcing this new service on Tuesday at the Mount Baker station, I asked the mayor of Tukwila if he had taken light rail to the press conference, because it was at a light rail station. Turns out he tried, but he couldn't find parking at Angle Lake, so he drove the entire distance to Mount Baker. Well, now he and thousands of other residents have a better option. Our goal is to grow our transit ridership even more and to uphold our principles of equity, accessibility, and financial sustainability. Now, on this mild and very typical spring day, it's hard to cast your mind back to those snowy weeks in February, but the folks at Metro will likely never forget the Snowmageddon, and so quickly followed Viadume. Along with cities across the region, we created an emergency response plan for the worst weather, and for 10 years, we never had to take that emergency plan off the shelf. But for the first time, Metro made it operational, deploying buses on routes that had been cleared and plowed by prior arrangement with our cities. It was an enormous undertaking. But we bounced back to regular service before the final patches of snow had melted on people's lawns. Social media these days is, I think you'd agree, a pretty dark space. Everyone's a critic. Everyone's got an opinion. And if there is something negative to say, you can be sure someone will say it. But I was heartened to see so many people commenting on how much they appreciated the operators who navigated difficult routes, the mechanics who chained up 21-ton buses in the freezing rain and blowing snow, the dispatchers and communications people who made sure riders were aware of all the changes. It almost makes Facebook worth it. Almost. But one thing we heard loud and clear was this. Riders wanted better information on their smartphones about the status of their bus, and we are making that happen. In the next few months, apps like the popular One Bus Away will be able to alert customers when their trip has been canceled or a bus stop has been added or closed. And for unforeseen impacts like an overturned fish truck or sudden winter storm, it will prompt you with an alert message when certain routes are canceled or rerouted and tell you where to go to find information about how to get to your destination. Customers will begin to see these data improvements as early as next month, with full rollout by the end of the year. This is just one way the best large transit agency in North America, I never tire of saying that, continues to attract new riders and make sure people get to where they need to be, whether by bus or shuttle or van pool or water taxi or ways we have not even yet considered. You know, transit's so important to me because it provides access to jobs and access to education, access to opportunity, and also to what we like to call our big backyard. Trailhead Direct has been one of our most successful launches. We began this pilot 2 years ago, providing weekend and holiday shuttle service to some of the most popular trailheads, including Margaret's Way and East Sunset Way. And last year we added pickups on Capitol Hill and Mount Baker, Eastgate, and North Bend to trailhead destinations including Mount Si and Mount Tenerife and Mailbox Peak. This Saturday and on our Earth Day, we're expanding service again so hikers can take Trailhead Direct shuttles from the Tukwila Light Rail Station or from the Renton Transit Center, and we're adding Cougar Mountain and Little Si as destinations. The testimonials say it all. I love this program. Such great service. We used this awesome service several times this season. Keep it going. You should run an IKEA shuttle. I hope that Rob Gannon and Christy True will be getting on that immediately after the speech. Here's the thing. I share this love of the outdoors. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time hiking with my scout troop and skiing in the mountains and swimming in the Sound. I developed a strong appreciation for the remarkable beauty of this place, an appreciation I'm sure you all share. As a young adult, I had the opportunity to be involved in the fight to save a neighborhood wooded ravine, the one we'd played in as kids. And that fight was successful, and maybe more than anything, led me down the path into politics. Well, King County has 175 miles of regional trails and over 200 parks and 28,000 acres of open space. And this August, the Parks Levy renewal will be before the voters. Thank you, Councilmember Lambert. If approved, this levy would connect or complete many well-traveled trails. Under this proposal, King County Parks would complete the final segment of the 11-mile East Lake Sammamish Trail. The East Side Rail Corridor would be expanded, including a new trail over the iconic Wilburton Trestle in Bellevue. And the proposal would fund an extension of the Green River Trail, which will connect the cities of Kent and Tukwila to Seattle in the South Park neighborhood. The proposed levy would generate an estimated $810 million over the next 6 years, and would cost the owner of a home valued at $500,000 an additional $2.25 a month. I want to recognize the important work of my Open Space Equity Cabinet to ensure that every resident in King County has access to green space. This is really central to this Parks Levy. The Cabinet is comprised of 21 members who help us focus investments and attention where they're needed most. And with us today, representing the Open Space Equity Cabinet, is Tukwila City Council Member Deshaun Quinn, and I would like to recognize him and our Cabinet's contributions. Thank you. The Parks Levy would maintain access to county parks and recreation and help restore and protect our rivers, our forests, our natural areas. And it will assist in tackling climate pollution. To celebrate our big backyard, I'm embarking on a tour, wait for it, 100 miles in 100 days in our King County parks. Now, I know what you're thinking. 1 mile a day is not exactly Jim Whittaker-esque. But with my schedule, it's going to be more 10 and 20 mile chunks at a time. So however it works out, we're going to do it. And it is a way to illustrate the beauty that is just on our doorstep. I'll be walking the East Lake Sammamish Trail and the East Side Rail Corridor. I'm going to run the bases or jog the bases or something at Steve Cox Park in White Center. And I'm going to ride and raft and maybe even rappel through our other parks in King County. And in fact, after this speech, I'm going to be putting on a pair of hiking boots and heading out on the Preston Snoqualmie Trail, which is just a stone's throw away. And you are welcome to stick around and see me off, or if you brought your hikers, join me for a mile or two. As the summer rolls along, watch for my social media feeds for updates and share your own experiences. Let this be a year when we all get out and explore our big backyard. Now, as we take on difficult assignments, following our true north means uniting our progressive policies and best-run government to solve some of the most difficult and long-standing challenges. That's especially true for our reforms of the juvenile legal system. In 2009, the average daily population of youth held on juvenile charges in the Youth Services Center was 110. Actually, a pretty dramatic reduction from a decade earlier. But this week, just 41. And yet we must go even further, and we have a plan to do just that. Our roadmap to zero youth detention charts our common journey to reduce racial disparities and the number of youth in detention, and help young people and families across the region to thrive. King County, the courts, law enforcement, families, no one can do this alone. For example, last year, in partnership with the County Council, we passed investments in community-based organizations to help provide the supports for families and young people who've gotten into trouble with the law, possibly reducing the average daily population at the Youth Services Center by up to 20%. We're also making investments upstream in diversion programs, and thank you to Dan Satterberg for your leadership, along with our public defense leaders, to make sure that we create those programs for young people. It will help youth and families who are experiencing crisis. The journey to zero youth detention, it's a long journey, and there are many barriers to overcome. But we believe in the power of continuous improvement, and we are putting that into practice. I want to hear from the community as we implement the roadmap, which will evolve and change and, yes, continuously improve. And finally, I'd like to talk about an aspect of our county that is top of all of our minds, the homelessness and housing affordability crisis. We must not be daunted by the fact that this will not resolve overnight. We must not be discouraged by the many barriers to providing hope, financial, bureaucratic, political. At King County, to fight homelessness, we are embracing what we are particularly good at as a government, innovation. For those at risk of losing housing, we have the Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative through Best Starts for Kids. I was at a community meeting the other day, and I asked a group, how many people know about Best Starts for Kids, considering most of you statistically voted for it? Not a single hand went up. So I explained that Best Starts for Kids is the nation's most comprehensive approach to early childhood development. It invests in prevention and early intervention strategies that promote healthier, more resilient children, youth, families, and communities. And then, everyone was very impressed with themselves for having voted for it. Our programs focus on the whole family, and that includes helping parents who are experiencing housing instability. So 2 years ago, the Homelessness Prevention Initiative, in 2 years, the Homelessness Prevention Initiative has helped prevent 6,000 King County residents from becoming homeless. They've remained securely housed. We've offered them job training. We've negotiated with landlords. We've helped them catch up on rent, all at dramatically less cost than helping someone out of homelessness once they fall into it. And we're investing in housing for those with no earned incomes and for those who are not quite earning the median wage. To provide housing faster and cheaper, we're deploying modular housing. So these are prefabricated units that are manufactured off-site and put together, much like my daughter's Lego sets that I step on every morning. And we've repurposed county land and surplus properties into the fight. Most recently, we've transformed the unused west wing of the downtown jail into a 24-hour shelter with services and case management for 40 men, chronically homeless, the hardest to serve. And after accepting recommendations from the Opioid Task Force in 2016, we got to work rolling out new programs and ideas. If you come to jail with a prescription for medication-assisted opioid treatment, we will make sure that treatment continues. If you come to jail experiencing opioid use disorder and want to get better, we will enroll you in medication-assisted treatment right there and provide counseling. And we're expanding this promising treatment at the downtown Public Health Center. And we're going even further. I asked, and the County Council approved, funding to allow us to reach out with medication-assisted treatment to people living in shelters, to those living in encampments. Later this summer, as a result of our One Table collaboration, I will present a plan to the County Council that will thoroughly reform how we direct our regional homelessness response. Gone will be siloed human services and homelessness efforts operating separately within King County and the City of Seattle and elsewhere. And instead, we will set up a new governance structure that will be jointly funded and jointly accountable, bringing our homeless systems together into one unified regional entity. Do you want to know what's at stake? Here's a story. After struggling for years with alcohol addiction, Robert Sanders moved back to Seattle a couple of years ago. He worked as a day laborer, but the work wasn't steady, and it didn't pay enough to cover the rent. So he became homeless. He lived in the encampment known as the Jungle. After spending time at Harborview and at Fairfax Hospital in Kirkland, where he received behavioral health care, Robert wanted to refocus on his recovery, on getting a job, on getting a place to call his own. I'll remind you again of our true north, making King County a welcoming community where every person has the opportunity to thrive. We don't guarantee success, but we provide the opportunity for every person to grow and to contribute to the community, and that is what we offered Robert. His sound behavioral health case manager, Megan Narvez, found Robert housing, and his vocational specialist, Leslie Lee, connected him with a job at a catering company. Well, Robert never looked back. He is happy and healthy, and he wants us to share this story so that it can inspire others. This is why we do this work. Now, you'd expect him to be here today to accept our applause, but he can't be here because he's at work. But Leslie and others from Team Robert are here with us, and I want to applaud them and all those who work so hard so others can fulfill their potential. All that we do is aimed at the notion of creating the foundation for individual and collective success. And we've put ourselves in a position to do better than pretty much any place in the country in making that aspiration real. The true north of smart progressive policies and effective government guides us to support efforts to make sure the 2020 census includes every single resident of King County. Every single one of us, because everyone counts, and everyone should be counted. We work to create a community that is equitable, and we continue to break down barriers of racism and economic inequality so that every person can succeed and share in our region's prosperity. Our county's namesake, Dr. Martin Luther King, he refused to accept that humanity is bound to what he called the starless midnight of racism, but rather that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Those words give us strength to press on. As I look back at all that we have accomplished, together over these years, I'm certain of our vision. I'm confident in our priorities, and I'm ready to tackle the work ahead. So let us fix our sights on that summit. And then let us figure out how not just each of us individually or within our own little areas of responsibility, but how collectively, as one team, as one community, we can move up that mountain and get to that place. If we do that, we'll have done something worthwhile with the brief time we have been given here. There's just not enough time to do everything. So we must consolidate our gains, increase our focus, increase our cooperation, and charge up that mountain to get to a place where we can plant the flag and be proud that we have achieved something truly unprecedented together. Thank you.